Good to have you back on the sociology desk. I know how it is right now. You're somewhere between the tiredness that comes from months of preparation and that quiet humming pressure that this examination puts on your chest. Because you know that a rank in the civil services can genuinely change the direction of the rest of your life. Sit with that for a moment and then set it aside. Because for the next few minutes, we are going to do only one thing. We are going to take the freshest piece of Indian public life, the Supreme Court's verdict on Oraon customary succession, and I am going to show you exactly how to convert it into a 20-mark paper 2 answer that scores in the top band. This is issue 048, and today we go deep on one event. The event is this. On the 9th of July 2026, a two-judge bench of the Supreme Court, Justices Sanjay Karol and N. Kotiswar Singh, decided the case of Bejla Oraon versus Kali Das Oraon. The dispute was over ancestral land inside an Oraon tribal family in Jharkhand. One side said, our man Punai was taken in as a Ghardamad, a resident son-in-law, by the uncle-in-law, so he inherits. The other side said, no, there is no such custom, so the nearest male agnate, the nearest male relative on the paternal line, inherits. The Supreme Court sided with the plaintiff, and here is why this matters for you as a sociology optional candidate. On the syllabus map, this case sits inside tribal communities in India, and it also sits inside systems of kinship in India. 2 units, 1 event. That is the kind of overlap that lets you deploy the same evidence across multiple probable questions. Now let us set the concept. Customary law inside the tribal domain is often described as autonomous, as a shield of tribal identity against the outside state. That description is not wrong, but it is incomplete. Customary law is also, sociologically, one of the most durable containers of patriarchy in India, because it locks descent along the male agnate line and freezes the daughter outside ancestral property. That is the argument. Now watch what the court actually did. It affirmed that Oraon daughters do not inherit ancestral land, and that Ghardamad is a narrow exception, allowed only when the last male owner or his widow inducts the son-in-law. Everything the court said, treated as facts, becomes narration. Everything the court said, treated as evidence of patriarchal transmission, becomes sociology. That distinction is your entire scoring advantage. Now the primary thinker for this answer, Bina Agarwal, and the concept is the bargaining approach anchored in her book, A Field of One's Own. Her central claim is very simple and very testable. In a rural South Asian household, the single most decisive factor in a woman's welfare, autonomy, and voice is not employment, not education, not income. It is an independent, direct claim over arable land, because that claim sets her fallback position. If she can walk out and still eat, her voice inside the household is real. If she cannot, it is not. Apply that to Budhain, the Oraon daughter in this case. The customary rule, endorsed by the court, places her outside ancestral land. Her fallback position collapses. Her intra-household bargaining power is structurally suppressed. That single move, using Agarwal, is what separates a 14 out of 20 script from a top-band script. Here is the quotable formulation you can carry into the answer. As Bina Agarwal argued in A Field of One's Own, the single most decisive factor in a South Asian rural woman's welfare is not employment or income, but a direct individual claim to arable land. Write that line, attribute it, and move on. Second thinker, G.S. Ghurye, and the concept is his assimilationist thesis, Tribes as Backward Hindus. Ghurye's argument against Verrier Elvin's isolationist view was that Indian tribes are not a separate societal order, but a structural variant of caste Hindu society, with the same patrilineal, patrilocal, male transmission of land. Now look at the Bejla Oraon judgment. The bench relies on Sarachandra Roy's Colonial Ethnography, the Oraon of Chota Nagpur, to define what the Oraon rule of descent actually is. The court, through its authority, is fixing tribal succession in exactly the shape Ghurye described: male agnate, patrilineal, gender exclusionary. That is the sociology of the judgment itself, and it is what a top ranker will name in the answer. A candidate who cannot sink this ruling to the Ghurye-Elvin debate loses at least 3 marks. Now speak with me from the examiner's chair. 2 scripts arrive on my desk. Script A opens with, "In India, tribes have their own customary laws, and the Supreme Court has decided a case on 9 July 2026. Then it describes the case. That is a 14 out of 20 script at best. Script B opens with, "Customary law inside the tribal domain does not stand outside the sociology of patriarchy. It is one of its most durable containers." It names Beena Agarwal, cites a field of one's own, uses the Bejla Oraon case in only 2 sentences as evidence, brings in Ghurye's assimilation thesis to explain why the court relied on Roy's colonial ethnography, drops in Iravati Karve to fix the geography of Patriliny in Chota Nagpur, and closes with the tension between Article 15 and the 6th schedule inside the integration autonomy debate. That is a 19 out of 20 script. Notice what changed. Same case, same syllabus, same 250 words. The difference is the sinking. The current event is your evidence. The theory is your destination. Say that to yourself before every 20 marker. The current event is your evidence. The theory is your destination. Now the probable question. Write this down. In the light of the Supreme Court's recent restatement of Oraon customary succession, critically examine the proposition that customary law functions as a durable container of patriarchy inside the tribal domain. That is Architecture C, Contemporary Application, 20 marks, Paper 2. If this question arrives on your paper, you already know the answer. Agarwal, Ghurye, Karve, Betel, in that order. Event as evidence. Close on Article 15 versus the 6th schedule. Practice writing it in 250 words tonight. Time yourself. Then read it back and ask, did I narrate the case or did I use it? That is the whole examination. Quick recap. 1. Customary law inside the tribal domain is a container of patriarchy, not its exception. 2. Beena Agarwal is your anchor thinker for gendered land rights. If you name her and cite a field of one's own, you have already secured the theory marks. 3. G.S. Ghurye's assimilation thesis explains why the court leans on Roy's colonial monograph, and it earns you the Indian thinker crosslink. 4. Close the answer on the unresolved tension between constitutional equality under Article 15 and tribal customary autonomy under the 6th schedule and PESA. That is the top band closing move. Remember it. That is today's brief. Wishing you a steady, unshaken day at the desk. Here is the one thing I want you to hold on to today. The candidates who eventually clear this examination are not the ones with the sharpest mind on day 1. They are the ones who kept showing up on day 230, when nothing felt like it was moving. Momentum, day after quiet day, is the real hidden syllabus of this examination. and you are already inside it. One small thing before we close. If you want the full styled PDF brief for today, with the complete answer block, the model answer, the answer skeleton, the quotation arsenal, the flashcards, and the examiner notes, drop your email in a comment below or write to us at team